All right. Is anybody in? Anybody stay up past their bedtime tonight? All right, you're in. You gonna fall asleep? Well, I feel you. I might fall asleep my damn self. I'm happy to see y'all though. Yeah, it's been a long day. Celeste, how are you? And I did want to say something. I'll wait a second to see if anybody else comes in. Spiritual light messenger. That's what number 11 is. Yeah, for some reason that people say the number 1111, that time 1111, like portals open into other worlds or portals open within us, and it's supposed to be spiritually significant. So I chose 1111, and it worked. When I first started doing these live streams, nobody was showing up, and then I said, let me try the time 1111, and when I did that, next thing you know, it was like 50 people showed up, then 100, then 200. So I keep using that same number. 1111 always works for me. You heard it was a reset? Yeah, I heard that too. I heard that too. That's the time where you could like you have more power, more control over your reality to change certain things. I heard, but I did want to say I know that everybody heard about the crazy, shocking news of what's going on with the alt right crowds and everybody taking over the Capitol building in DC. I just want to implore everybody and beseech everybody, please just stay positive, keep your mind focused on what you got to do, and yeah, try your best. Try your best to strengthen yourself and empower yourself. That's the only thing we can really do at this time. You want to go to sleep? Okay. Love and peace. Have a good night, Celeste. But yeah, like I was saying, just keep your mind focused on positivity and keep empowering yourself. Empower yourself in every way possible, because whatever is gonna happen next, if you empower yourself, prepare yourself, you'll be ready for whatever comes. This world is going through, or this country is going through some seismic upheaval. It's going through some really amazing cultural changes. Just stay positive and make sure that things change for the better for you and for your family and for your community. You have more power than you think you do. So let's stay focused on that. Don't ever feel overwhelmed, or try not to feel too overwhelmed. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that. And I'm glad you stayed up with us too. This is your first time, so we're happy that you're here with us. Yeah, Insight Timer is making some changes, and I have to submit a new photograph. But I'm trying to get in contact with a friend of mine because I want some really good photos. And I think that once I get some really good photos, they'll be able to like put my face on more advertising and stuff, so I can get more people come in and join us. So I'm really working on that now. I'm trying to get in contact with my boy. He's a professional photographer. If I can get him to rock and roll with me this weekend, hopefully next week we'll have more people in here with us. That's right. Writing the basic instructions before leaving Earth. That's right. Right in the Bible. And it's been a lot of people prophesying about this time. You know, and I'm speaking from a spiritual perspective, not a religious one. There's a lot of people who predicted that these times were going to come, and they're going to come and they're going to go. And 100 years from now, they're going to happen again until we purify ourselves of these savage behaviors and savage desires. That's why I strongly believe in spiritual systems. We need a spiritual system to help us to calm all this hate and rage inside of us, and all these uncontrollable urges that we haven't addressed in our sojourn on this planet. Akshay, how are you? That's what people are turning away from religion for understandable reasons. But all those religions, I show respect to them because they were somebody's attempt, failed or not, to get us under control. And I don't mean that in a totalitarian way. I just mean get us under control in the sense of calming ourselves down and getting ourselves focused and tapping into our potential. And then some people misuse religion to try to really control other individuals and take wealth and resources. But I think that for individuals who try to use religion and spirituality positive ways, I try to show them respect. That's why I don't follow a religion, but I always try to show respect to all of them if possible. We're gonna wait like maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we are going to begin. In Connecticut right now, it's cold. So I left that gallon of water in my car and forgot it was there for like 3 days, and that was perfect. Your religion opens your eyes to your spirituality, and that's usually how it starts. I'm grateful. Am I doing a meditation? No, I'm not doing a meditation, Celeste. I'm going to be doing more or less a lecture about Sufism and love, and where the concept of divine love in Sufi Islam kind of began. And I'll probably wait like maybe 1 more minute, and then we'll get started. How's everybody doing, by the way? Hope everybody's well. Hope everybody's healthy. Yes, we'll be back next week. We do a 10-10, and then we do 11-11. Thank you, favorite diva. All right, so we're gonna start. Let's begin. So last week, good night, everyone. Good night, Celeste. So yeah, so last week we talked a little bit about a guy named Ibn Arabi, who was a Sufi mystic years, hundreds of years ago, actually. And now we're going to continue with a little bit more about Sufism, but this time I wanted to take it from a different perspective. Last week I was talking about a Sufi mystic named Ibn Arabi, who came to the conclusion that God, Allah, is the only reality and that everything else is just an illusion, which I thought was a very beautiful concept and a very beautiful teaching. This week we're going to be talking about a woman whose name is Rabi'a. Rabi'a al-Basri is what they call her for short. Her real name is Abia, and there's a whole bunch of other names. I couldn't remember all of them, so I just said I'll stick to the simplest one. So Rabi'a al-Basri. And I'll tell you a little bit about her because she's kind of an important Sufi mystic. She's important. Good morning, Ann. Glad you joined us. So Rabi'a is important, at least for me, because first and foremost, a woman who was a Sufi mystic poet, who was a teacher, and very well respected, and she also actually taught men and had groups of followers around her and was an instructor for everyone. That in and of itself was a surprise to me because in the Western world, our concept of Sufi Islam and the various forms of Islam over in the East, we think that women don't have any power and don't have any respect. But if you look at the history of Islam, there were numerous women who were very well respected. They were very well respected for their piety, for their intelligence, for their knowledge, and they were great teachers. And Rabia, at least at that point in time, is an example of a woman who was actually given societal respect and authority. We think of Islam as being very repressive to women, but reading about Rabia was one of the things that I noticed is the fact that she was very well respected and not objectified, wasn't treated in a manner that was abusive, even though at one point in time she did endorse slavery. But once she was released from slavery, she was actually seen by individuals who lived during her time as a saint who was gifted by God Himself. So I want to tell you a little bit about her story because I think she has an interesting story. And then I'm going to read to you some of her poems and we're going to discuss some of the things that she introduced into the concept of Islam, onto the religion of Islam, which is the idea of divine love. And I think a lot of it is really fascinating. Ivan, how are you doing from New Hampshire? Glad you joined us. Okay, so in mystical Islamic Sufism, there was a woman who was named Rabi'a. Her name means the fourth because she was the fourth of the daughters of her parents, and she was from a place called Al Basra, which is located in where we find modern Iraq. Okay, she was a woman who was very deeply devoted, and her respect as a teacher challenged our concepts of Islam and the way Islam treated women. Now, Rabia came from a very, very poor family. And one night, her father, who was a hardworking man but just didn't have enough money, he was looking around his house for some oil to light a lamp. Couldn't find any oil whatsoever within his home. His wife said to him, "You know what? Go ask one of our neighbors." He was a proud man. He was so proud he didn't want to ask anybody for anything. So he had a plan that he was going to go outside and pretend like he was asking one of the neighbors for some oil, or pretend like he was asking for help, and then go back home and say, "Oh, I couldn't find anything. Sorry." But when he went outside, he actually fell into a transcendental trance where he saw a vision of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad appeared to him and said that your daughter Rabia is a favorite of the Lord, and she was destined to be a very wise and powerful teacher and keep people and attract people and keep people on the path of Islam toward God. So when Rabia's father heard this, his mind was absolutely blown. He starts crying these tears, right, of joy that the prophet who had passed away at that time had appeared to him in a vision, was telling him his daughter was special, was favored, that she was destined for righteousness. That was a beautiful, beautiful thing to him. But the prophet went even further and said, "Listen, you need some help and I'm going to help you." The prophet Muhammad said, I want you to write a letter and I want you to go to the emir. The emir is an Arabic word for prince. My son Divine, his middle name is Emir. So he said, go to the emir of the city of Basra. Go to the emir and tell him that every single time you pray on Thursday, you usually do 1,000, you actually give God thanks 1,000 times. But last Thursday you did not. Last Thursday you got lazy. I want you to write that in a letter and give the letter to the emir and tell the emir, the person who gives you this letter, give them whatever they want. Now this is something that nobody could have possibly knew. Nobody could have knew how many times he thanked God in his room in the privacy of his prayers at night. So when Rabia's father went to the emir and said, "Hey, listen, I have a message from you from the Prophet Muhammad who appeared to me in a vision," and he gave him the letter, the emir read the letter, and when that information was there, that he actually shorted Allah on how many times he gave thanks last Thursday, and nobody could know that, that's when he knew that something special was going on. The emir knew that there was something special going on, and he wept tears of joy because he knew that Allah was watching him and that the Prophet Muhammad had taken favor with him. So he said to Rabia's father, "Whatever you need, let me know and I'll give it to you." And he gave him 1,000 dinars, 1,000 gold coins right there. Take it, go ahead. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you want to do with them. They're yours. And if you need anything ever again, just come and ask me. So the Rabia's father went home. And he was happy. He was elated. Took care of his family. Bought things that he needed. Bought some oil, which he needed some oil. He needed some food, clothing. He did everything he needed to do to take care of his family. Eventually, unfortunately, though, he passed away and he died. When he died, he left the family poor again. Rabia decided that she didn't want to be a burden on the family and she wanted to find her own way, so she left her family, left her sisters at the time. And when she left her sisters, she was traveling with a caravan, going nowhere in particular. However, on the road, the caravan came across some robbers. The robbers beat people, killed some people, robbed everybody, and took Rabia, kidnapped her, and sold her into slavery. When Rabia was sold into slavery, she was sold to a wealthy man who lived in the city of Basra. And he worked her very hard. Her life was very miserable, full of drudgery, full of hard labor and loneliness. However, she did not lose faith, and she remained a very devout Muslim. So what did she do? Every single day she would fast. Almost every day she would keep a fast as if she was practicing Ramadan. Every single day. Barely eating for days and days on end. And working hard the entire day. And then, not only would she work hard the entire day, she would be in her room most hours of the night, praying intensely to God. but not praying and begging, saying, God, please save me. I don't want to be a slave. No, she was praying out of devotion, complete and total love of devotion. So one day, the guy who bought her into slavery, he was unable to sleep. Got up and was walking around the house at night, and he heard a little tiny voice in the back room praying. But it was a voice that was filled with so much humility and so much devotion. He was fixated. What's going on? Who is that? He didn't even recognize the voice. And he opened the door, and there was Rabi'a in her room praying. And according to some folk tales, when she was praying, she was surrounded by a circle of light. She was surrounded by a beautiful circle of light. And so this man, when he saw her, he ran back into his room, hopped in the bed, and he thought to himself, I can't keep her as my slave. She is so righteous and she is so pure. I'm being sacrilegious by making her my servant. And he was up the whole night, tossing and turning, couldn't sleep because he felt so much guilt over being the overlord to a young woman who was so righteous. He said, you know what? I can't have her as my servant. She's so righteous and she's so wise. I'm going to serve her. So the following day, Rabi'a got up. She started going about her work and her labor. And he stopped her. He fell on his knees and he said, listen, I saw you praying last night and it was so beautiful. I can't have you as my servant anymore. I'm going to serve you and you're going to become the mistress of this house. And she said, well, I don't want to be the mistress of this home. What I want to do is I want to leave. If you're going to give me the power to do what I want to do in this house, give me the power to do what I want to do outside of this house, let me go. And he immediately said, yes, I will do so. You're free to go. So she left. And as she left, she became a renowned teacher. People from all over the world began to come to her because they wanted to hear her teachings about God, her teachings about religion, her teachings about the spirit. And there were some very, very wise Sufi mystics who were world renowned that were coming to her and humbling themselves. But the interesting thing about it is people think that in this culture, in the Islamic culture, the woman is pushed down and the man is put up. But here, there are examples of men who came to her and said, teach me. I don't know. The way you approach God, the passion that you have, I'm going to submit myself to you and I want to teach you. And she was such a pious woman and so beautiful that men from all over the world would come and propose marriage to her and she would turn them down. No, thank you. I'm only a servant of God. That's what I am. I only want to serve God and I want to serve God completely. I don't want a husband because a husband is going to distract me from my true love. My true love is God. And there was one famous man who came to learn from her and they sat up all hours of the night till the sun came up, speaking about the inner hidden meanings of the Quran and the inner hidden meanings of certain ayahs and certain surahs. And eventually, the night was over with, and he realized he had done something inappropriate. Not that he was a bad person, but he had done something inappropriate. He had stayed in this unmarried woman's room the entire night. And he said to her, you know what? I sat here learning from you so much, I forgot that I was a man and you were a woman. He said, I totally forgot. I didn't think about society's rules. I didn't think about what I'm supposed to do or how I'm supposed to treat this situation because I just wanted to learn from you. And of course, he was so taken by her, he even proposed and said, listen, you're beautiful, you're amazing, I need you, can I marry you? And she even said, thanks but no thanks, buddy. You're a nice guy, you're swell, but no thank you. And she turned him down. She began to have even more wonderful, mind-blowing, transcendental spiritual experiences. And it got to the point where she began to have such amazing spiritual experiences that she began to speak of God in a way no one had ever heard of before. And speak about something that no one had ever thought of before. See, during the time of the Prophet gave the surahs, he gave the ayahs, he gave a basic concept about God. And there were certain rules and regulations and certain in-depth knowledge in the Quran. But for a very long time after the Prophet passed away, there was sort of these two worlds at war, philosophically and theologically, not physically. People were trying to decide if God was a God of law or if God was a God of spirituality. And they had a difficult time bringing these two together and marrying these two together. So people saw God as transcendental, way above human comprehension, way above human understanding. And some people felt like in order for you to understand God, you need to understand God through the eye of law. You see God through the eye of law. But Rabi'a, in her wisdom and beauty, she introduced something that was not present in Islam, which was the idea of divine love. And in her writing, her connection to God was based upon love, not upon law, not upon scripture, not upon interpreting scripture or debating about the true meaning of scripture, not even looking for the hidden meanings in scripture, but just her passion to be connected to something higher and greater than herself made her a higher and greater teacher. She introduced, and she's accredited with introducing the idea of divine love to the Sufi mystic format. And now, a young woman who was once a slave has so much impact and so much influence that her influence in Sufi Islam exists even to this day. You look at all of the Sufi mystic poets, you look at Rumi, who's one of the most famous, and Rumi is constantly writing about love, writing about God and love, about being overflowing with love, bursting with love for God. That came from Rabi'a. Rabi'a did that first. She was the one who introduced the idea of God's love for us and our love and connection with God. And if you listen to some of her poetry is so beautiful. But it's interesting because a lot of it sounds almost like love poetry. And it's borderline erotic. It's very, very lovely. And she had a mind that was full of the potential of her relationship with God. She deepened her relationship with God by writing about God as if he was her man. Writing about God like God was her lover. And it was very interesting because no one had ever done that in Judeo-Christian Islamic world before. Now, in other mythologies and other religions, you hear about the gods coming to earth and making love to women all of the time. But in a spiritual system like Islam, where God is transcendent, the idea of God being a lover was something that was, some people may have interpreted it as being a dangerous idea, but she is so well respected that they understand that she's only writing from the position of true love and devotion. But I have written down a couple of quotes from her writing I want to share with you guys. You're right, ecstasy. That's exactly what it is. Finding God in that ecstasy, that complete and total devotion that elevates you. Being completely and totally devoted to this being that you refer to as God. Sacred sexuality. Well, that's the interesting part about it, lady. It's not sexual. It sounds almost like sex because our concept of that level of love and devotion, because of the culture that we live in, we automatically attribute it to sex. But when she died unmarried. She died a virgin and an ascetic. So we're thinking about it in terms of sacred sexuality, but really it was just total mind-blowing devotion, which is something that a lot of us, we don't get. Because if I'm devoted like that to somebody, the sexual aspect is going to be a part of it. Exactly. A divine relationship with God is a divine relationship with self. Exactly. And she often wrote about wanting to be in a state of oneness with God, meaning that she wanted to just completely just be obliterated. She wrote in one of her lines, she wrote that she wrote that it was difficult trying to describe a relationship with someone whose very presence blots you out, meaning that she felt so close to God that she kind of disappeared, which is an interesting way to write it. It's almost like a girlfriend who feels like her boyfriend is becoming too important in her life, in a sense. Not to trivialize it or disrespect anybody, but it's interesting. Exactly, nirvana. Exactly, it's a state of nirvana, but it's a state of intense nirvana to the point where it almost sounds sensual. I think sensual is a better word than sexual to describe what I'm trying to describe. You know. But how did she get to that point of ecstasy? She got to that point of ecstasy by her devotion. I think that's one thing a lot of us kind of a lot of us kind of don't understand. We want that higher level of ecstasy without realizing that ecstasy comes from devotion. First the devotion comes, then the ecstasy comes. We think that you meet somebody and it's wonderful and the sex is mind blowing and it's ecstatic, but you can't reach that level of ecstasy without being devoted to the person. without being devoted to yourself. Sensuality, it's a perfect word, yes. So I want to read you guys a couple of her poems and just listen to the way she's describing her spiritual experiences and her spiritual relationship. And I had to, I didn't, these are not the whole complete poems. These are just snippets that I found really interesting that kind of drove the point home. But she has a lot of poems. And if you get if you get a chance, you get time, look up Rabia Al Basri. This is one of her poems. Oh my Lord, the stars glitter and the eyes of man are closed. Kings have locked their doors, and each lover is alone with his love, and I am alone with you. So just from the beginning, that's a light one, but that is showing you how in her mind God is sort of her lover. Everybody else is alone with the person they love. They're closing their doors, they're locking their doors. Men are laying down beside the women that they love, and she feels that way about God. I'm alone here with you. It was kind of interesting, but that's a light one. That's an introductory one. We can go a little deeper. She wrote, "Your hope in my heart." Hold on one second. My handwriting is a little messy. "Your hope in my heart is the surest treasure. Your name on my tongue is the sweetest word. My choicest hours are the hours I spend with you. If I adore you for yourself, do not deny me your eternal beauty." That sounds like a love poem. She's saying that your name is the sweetest word on my tongue, and if I love you and I adore you just for you, just don't deny me your eternal beauty. So it's a beautiful line. But there's more to it that I should have wrote down. But in this particular poem, she's talking about how many people will worship God because they want heaven, or they want paradise. They want that beautiful garden of paradise. And some people worship God. Um, People worship God because they're afraid of burning in hell. And she's basically saying to God, listen, I'm not going to worship you for any of that. I'm not worshiping you because I want the garden. I'm not going to worship you because I'm afraid of hell. I'm going to worship you just because I love you. And if that's the reason why I worship you, please don't deny me your presence. And they say that there's an image, a very famous image of Rabi'a, the saint. And she would walk around with a bucket of water in one hand and a torch in the other hand. And she said that with the water, she would cool the fires of hell, and with the torch, she would burn down paradise. Because she felt like she felt like fear of hell or the longing for paradise and comfort, that she felt like those were inadequate reasons to worship God. She was so amazed and so mystified by the lover God. She felt like I don't need a reason. You don't have to scare me to love you, and you ain't got to reward me to love you. I love you for you. When you see that image and you read about that image, it's a image that you constantly see of her with the bucket of water and the torch in one hand, and the bucket of water in the other hand. And I thought that was really interesting. Angela Bassett's marriage is founded in spiritual love first, God first. I think that's excellent. That God love, that self love is very important, and I think that a lot of people have taken that out of the religion, out of the relationship, I understand why. Yep, Rabia Al Adawiya Al. See, I can't even say it. I just stuck to Al Basri. Yep, she was Iraqi. Yep, modern Iraq. Exactly. Yeah, but like I was saying, it's very important to combine all your love into the relationship. Your love for God, your love for yourself. The more love you bring to the relationship, the better. Bring all your love to the relationship. A lot of times relationships end because we bring our love for one thing. You might love sex, so you're with this person because your love for the sex, but you leave your spiritual love over there. Or you might leave your love for art over here, or your love for wacky weird anime over there. Bring all your love to the relationship. The more love, the stronger the relationship will be, especially when it's a spiritual love and you're looking at something deeper and more transcendent. I think that's perfect. Another one of her poems. This poem is called Reality. And these are just little lines that I took from the poems, not the whole poem. But the poem Reality says, "In love, nothing exists between heart and heart. Speech is born out of longing, true description from the real taste. The one who tastes knows, the one who explains lies." Now, basically what she's saying here is that between two individuals who love each other, there's no boundary between them. They become one. She's saying there's nothing between heart and heart. So her heart was so devoted to God, and God, in return, his heart was devoted to her. So there was no blockage between the two. So she was in a state of oneness with God. And she's saying that individuals who sit there trying to describe it and put it into words, oftentimes they've never experienced that before. They're trying to explain to you what it is and how it works. Sonia, you want to shout out? Shout out to Sonia. Glad you're here, Sonia. But yeah, we are so busy trying to describe what the experience of being with God is like. But she's saying that individuals who have really experienced something this deep, they're not sitting here trying to describe it to you because they're too busy living it. And she's really saying that anybody who has really tasted that depth of pleasure, anybody who's that familiar with that depth of pleasure, they know. And so they don't talk about it too much. Individuals who don't know and who haven't experienced that, they will sit there trying to explain it to you, but she's saying they're lying. She's so devoted to God. She's like, man, y'all lying. You sitting here talking about my man. She's talking about God like that's her man. Like, y'all lying. Y'all know my man. You feel me? She's like, nah, y'all ain't been with my man. Y'all know my man like I know my man. You know? That's the interesting part about it. She's talking about God like that's her man. Like they really be on it like that. Another one. I found her poem so beautiful. I wrote down a few quotes. Um, all I want is the essence of your love, and return to be one with you, and to become your face. Now that one I found to be kind of interesting. I didn't know what she meant by become your face, but I thought, well, if you're in a state of oneness with somebody, and you guys become one body, one entity, you're fused together. The face, I think, is the part of you that makes you look beautiful. So I think she was saying, I want to become so pure. When I represent you, people look at me and see my beauty because I'm representing you. I'm one with you. So people will find your beauty because of my purity and the image that I represent. In the same image of, yeah, you're right. That's a good way to put it. You broke it down perfectly, favorite diva. Synergy, 1 plus 1 equals 3. You gotta break that down, lady. I don't know what that says. I don't know what that means. 1 plus 1 equals 3. Break that down for me. Rabia, Ola, Duia, Alkezia. That's how you say it?